One thing that I forgot to mention in my previous Sex Pistols, never mind the Bollocks review, is that here's an impressive power that this album retains, is that, you know, playing this album out in public still retains an abrasive shock value about it. Not necessarily in the lyrical content, but because of the music itself, which is better, because there were those who just thought that this music was political shock posturing, just edgy words and curses and political statements, just young idealistic this and that. But actually, musically, with Lydon's just these bizarre wailing vocals and such abrasive and rough kind of atonal guitar riffing, it's totally still the kind of album you can play in public, and it would retain in many ways. I mean, society was very frigid, especially in the UK and in the mid-late 70s. But like even now, you're not going to be playing this in any public place and expecting people just to nod their head and be like, oh yeah, some nice tunes, The Beatles have lost that power. Elvis lost that power. The Sex Pistols did not. And you know what? Other punk rock acts after the Sex Pistols? Yeah, if ever you're playing those in public, other people will pigeonhole you as a fan of punk rock. Oh, he likes that kind of music. Cool. To each their own. If you're blasting Black Flag in public, that's what people will think. Blasting Dead Kennedys, Ramones, any American hardcore acts, maybe if you get into really extreme power violence stuff, people might start to think you're a bit irritating. But if you want people to think you're a nuisance, like proper, and not just, oh yes, they're a fan of punk rock. If you want to annoy people, the Sex Pistols will still work. And here's the thing. If you want people to still think you're some bizarre, alien-minded creature listening to some of the most strange, interdimensional music ever heard, you'd think that you need to pluck some music from like 45 years plus in the future. No, go to 1979. Play Pill's Metal Box again. Lydon's wailing vocals return, this time accompanied by Jah Wobble's attempts to replicate these amazing dub sonics, plus Keith Levine's amazing rhythm guitar and this pulsating rhythmic drum track. There's a few different credited drummers: David Humphrey, Richard Dudansky, and Martin Atkins. And Keith Levine played every instrumental track on the Radio 4 tune. If you still want people to think you're annoying, an album from 1977 like Nevermind the Bollocks still amazingly works. As it was intended, I suppose. Metal Box, it's an even more audacious challenge to still sound alien and strange, a 1979 record, when technology has moved on. And yet, Metal Box from Pill, Lydon, Levine, Wobble, the aforementioned drummers, an astonishing accomplishment they've still created here. Amazing stuff. I have to admit, I've never liked that first Public Image album. People seem to love it, but it almost appears as though it's all the superficial garbage about the Sex Pistols, just into this one album without any of the interesting song or catchy, hooky songwriting. It's just John Lydon going on for 2 tracks in the middle of the album about religion. Ooh, it's just like, it's terrible. It's Reddit atheism tier garbage, frankly. And the album's just obvious nonsense for kids who just think it's like, oh yeah, the authority figures were lying to us or trying to make us believe things that may or may not be true. Good take, Lydon. To be fair, he probably thinks it's all naive and such now. Pill's a huge disappointment as a recording artist. One of the most acclaimed acts in music history in the cred circles. But, they have 2 good albums, and it's because of other people. I'm sorry. The fact is that Metal Box works because of Jah Wobble. The Flowers of Romance works because they were just at the end. It's a bit of Nick Launer, the engineer, and it's a bit of slash producer on that album. It's a bit of Lydon being at the end and before the kind of, I'm going to ironically sell out and make lazy kind of hit-oriented music. Ooh, that'll be so punk rock of me sort of thing. In a way it was just do what I guess people didn't expect of you to kind of shock people, but it becomes kind of superficial marketing gimmick after a while, so maybe not as punk as it seems, really. Anyway, but at that point, you also had Levine still in the band, and Levine's a fairly interesting creative force in his own right. Flowers of Romance, we'll do a review of that eventually. That's a genius album as well, even more crazy. Oh my god, if you want people to think you're a weirdo, yeah, pump this out in public. Although it might be a bit like too weird to the point of like fetishistic, ooh, I'm weird. Versus like Metal Box, you can understand, you hear someone playing that in the park, you're like, okay, I can understand how they enjoy that, but like, man, there's not a lot of music like that. What is that? Because when you think of dub, you think of, you know, do 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 do, plucked out of time there, you know, like Jah Wobble's other albums, essentially. What's going on in Metal Box? Not even Jah Wobble, who's a genius of many very interesting albums, could ever replicate it truly. Very, very captivating. Metal Box still retains all of the power from 1979. Maybe someone who was 14 upon its release in 79 might dispute that. Oh no, you can't imagine what it was like. You're right, maybe I truly couldn't. Although I will say, I still feel like I'm listening to something with Metal Box, and I have to admit, I don't get that kind of excitement from 21st century albums of like, wow, like recorded music is capable of some really interesting moods. I wish I felt that way more about modern music, but it's not like there's a slew of albums that feel the way Metal Box does in the 20th century either, to be fair. It's such a unique and special accomplishment, obviously. Listen to it if you haven't already. 10 seconds in, you'll know if you won't care much for this album, or if you think this is going to be absolute fucking genius. There's no in between, honestly. You're thinking this might be pretty cool. And when the drums kick in and that bass gets louder, and you're thinking, yeah. Then Levine starts prickling in your brain. And that's even before Leiden starts coming. Getting rid of the albatross. Images of Sam Coleridge springing into your mind, and you're thinking, what a lovely use of a repetitious phrase and one of such heavy associations like an albatross to begin an album experience with. What a choice. Absolutely brilliant album. I will argue. Absolutely.